We're gonna start? Okay, we're gonna start, you guys.
No se oye, Víctor.
Maybe now?
You look like a rookie. Come on.
Yeah, I know. This is, I think, my 44th show, and I still don't learn. Here goes again. Welcome, everybody. This is the WBC Talk, Stay Home, Stay Safe, round 22. This is the 22nd round that we've been working with, and we want to thank everybody for being here. First, I would like to introduce Mauricio Sulaimán, president of the WBC. Mauricio.
Thank you, Victor. Welcome, everyone. This is the WBC Talks. As you all know, today is a very special panel. We have the influencers, those who day after day are feeding the world with so many stories, so many situations, news in our beloved sport of boxing. I would like to thank Nancy for helping us putting this great panel together. And I would like to welcome each one of you. This is your show. We want you to enjoy it. WBC Talks has the only intention to keep the boxing community in communications. We like to have fun. We like to, those watching the show, to have fun, to learn, and to experience what boxing is all about. Before we start, I want to do something that I learned through social distancing, through video conferences. So I had a conference with a Hope Foundation, one of the directors, and he showed me the faraway hug. So everyone reach out to the computer. Let's give each other a big hug. Come on, don't be shy. We can give hugs. Good. Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Microphone.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm being an amateur as well, but thank you, Mauricio. I'm not sure if you want to show the video that we presented to everybody right now, or would you like to show it at the end, Mauricio?
So why don't you please introduce the panel, and then we will show a nice video.
Okay, perfect. I want to introduce first and foremost AK and Barak, who are survivors from the coronavirus. And you know, I want to give them a round of applause.
Yeah.
I went through it. We were, you know, as soon as AK told me, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, "Are you sure you want to do the show?" And AK's like, "Yeah." And then we have Albert, who is one of our heroes as well, protecting our country. You know, I know he's been hard at work right now with all of this. I don't know how much you can tell us, but he does documentaries for a lot of fighters, and he'll tell you more about it. We have Ivan, who it was Ivan's idea, who reached out to me to do this panel. Ivan from BoxingReloaded from the Fresno area. And then we have Gustavo. Gustavo just interviewed Mauricio last week.
Yes, correct.
Mauricio.
Yeah.
And he's from the East Coast. He's one of the youngest ones right now from all of us, but he's so wise. He's so mature. I just had to have him on. And then we have Jeandra, who's both from the boxing and entertainment industry. I've known her my entire career. She'll tell you more about herself. Elie. What can I say about Elie? Elie is the pioneer. He is the man. I mean, come on. We've all watched Elie's videos. And I don't know if I missed anybody. Mauricio, Victor, but yeah, can you guys just tell us? Let's start with Jeandra.
You missed Barak. Barak.
You guys were first. You guys were first. But let's start with you guys. Let's start with you, AK. How did you get involved in boxing?
In boxing?
Yeah.
Well, just so everybody know, a lot of people, you know, call me AK, but My name is actually 𝗥, so it's the 𝗥 and Barak show. But don't feel bad because everybody says AK because that's the way it's read. But my name is 𝗥𝗢𝗨, and everybody knows me as 𝗥. But I mean, I boxed since I was involved in boxing since I was 5 years old. My father brought my brother and myself to the gym, to Gleason's gym when I was about 5, 6 years old, and I fought about 75 amateur fights. My brother went on to fight professionally. He was signed to Don King for 4 years. So I was exposed to the sport at a very young age, and I fell in love with it then. And I went on to do different things in life, and life just brought me back around to the sport, you know, about 10 years ago. I was into modeling, acting, and so on and so forth, but I always had a passion for the sport. And God put me in a position where I could host a little hip-hop internet radio show 10 years ago, which I turned into just talking about boxing here and there, and then it developed to something where Barak and I, we grew up in the kind of the same neighborhood in Brooklyn since we were young, and I reconnected with him years ago, and it was all part of God's plan. I guess you could say destiny brought us to where we are today.
And, you know, after Barak tells us a little bit, I really want both of you guys to tell us how you came up with the pull-up. I don't know, Mauricio, if you've seen the pull-up. You seen it, Mauricio?
Nancy, you're getting too anxious. Let everyone introduce, and then it's going to be, there's a lot of fun.
Barak, tell us.
You want to do the pull-up right now?
We got to do the pull-up on Mauricio.
We got to go to Mexico for that.
Yeah.
Barak?
Go ahead, Barak.
Hey, how you doing?
Go ahead. Tell us how you got involved in boxing.
I believe in purpose. I believe it started with me just bringing my son to the gym. You know, I grew up a martial artist, so in combat sports was just a thing of my family. You know, it runs in my family. My grandfather was a boxer, you know, so martial arts was in my family. I fought in a lot of karate tournaments. So fighting is my thing. But what really got me into the sport was when my son, I believe, was 6 years old. And he started boxing. I started bringing him to Gleason's. And then I realized that it's a totally different world, boxing, than martial arts. Martial arts is a lot of respect. You know, me being a black belt in Shotokan, I was respected as a certain way because of my achievements. But in boxing, it was different. It was like guys that are in the gym, they just want to fight each other. Their camp is angry. So I was like, you know what? At the high level of boxing, I saw respect. But in the gym, I saw a bunch of guys who was just like, had a lot of ego. So I said, you know, I need to be in this arena. I need to be in this environment to make it better for my son, to protect him. And that's what really got me started, you know? And one thing led to another. I hooked back up with 𝗥. Like he said, we grew up in the same neighborhood as teenagers, you know, and our love for boxing just connected us. And here we are today.
That's awesome. And Jeandra, tell us a little bit how you got involved.
Sure. Well, I was a longtime fan of boxing. My father was a super enthusiast. My godfather was a heavyweight contender in the 60s. And that kind of stoked that early love for boxing for me. As an adult, I wanted an outlet to talk about a sport that I enjoyed. So I started as a blogger and ultimately started contributing to an all sports site before moving into BoxingInsider, which is boxing specific. But I am very intrigued by the human stories, the human elements, the person behind the fight and what makes them great, what makes them tick, and kind of humanizing them for the audience. So that's what motivated me to go into the sport of boxing and what led me to BoxingInsider ultimately, so I could tell these stories.
You know, every single boxer is a script for a Hollywood movie. It's unbelievable what is behind every single story. So what a great view you have for the sport, which is the human element. Very nice.
And I had no idea your dad was a heavyweight contender. I'd like to hear more about that.
Your grandfather.
Oh, my godfather. No, my dad played baseball, but my godfather, I grew up hearing just some crazy stories growing up of the industry, much different than it is today, but it intrigued me enough to seek out more.
Definitely.
Yes.
Let's go with Elie. Elie, tell us how you got into boxing.
Manny Pacquiao. Before Pacquiao fought De La Hoya, I had a friend who was importing pearls from the Philippines to the US. And he kept telling me about this one fighter that I have to interview. At the time, I was covering the NBA. So I'm covering the Lakers, I'm traveling. And he said, you have to interview the best fighter in the world. And I'm thinking he's talking about, you know, Mike Tyson, like a superstar that we all know. And he was like, no, this guy, my friend tells me that he's flying. And the second that the pilot announces that Manny Pacquiao won, the whole plane's going crazy. So I go to interview Manny. He doesn't speak a lot of English. YouTube just started. And while I'm interviewing, let's say, Shaq and Kobe, and I'm getting, let's say, 10,000 views, which is back then was Manny Pacquiao.
Elie, your audio is breaking up.
That's all I covered was Pacquiao, and that's how I got.
Elie, can you hear me? Yeah, if you can move to a different place because your audio is breaking up. Maybe you get better reception.
Okay, sorry. Should I start again?
No, I think it's, you covered the NBA and then you used to get 10,000 hits. What happened with Manny Pacquiao when you interviewed him?
300,000 views the first day for a guy that I never heard of. It's not like he was after De La Hoya, he became another level of stardom. But before the De La Hoya fight, he wasn't the household name that he is today, obviously. I mean, so once you get into a boxing ring or you go to a boxing event, you have different atmosphere, different vibe than any other sports. And I've covered every sport. I've covered the Olympics. And you kind of get into it. And the personalities from the coaches to the fighters to the sparring partners to just the fans is something totally different. And you get addicted to it.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely get addicted to it. Albert, tell us a little bit about how you got into boxing.
Well, I boxed when I was a kid, poorly, but I was always into boxing growing up. I joined the Army when I was 19, and it was after a deployment. I was deployed during the surge in Iraq in 2008 as an infantryman. Saw quite a bit of combat, had a hard time readjusting back to the regular world when I got home. And I found myself stationed in the Los Angeles area and found myself back in a boxing gym. And it was just a desire after talking to these guys, meeting these guys. It was just a desire to start telling these stories of these fighters who just had these awesome sacrifices that they had to make. And it was something that I was really relating to in my situation at the time as a fighter or as a soldier, dealing with PTSD coming back, and everything just sort of worked together. I started initially as a writer, writing for several different websites. And then that turned into filming documentaries about fighters and telling their stories, which sort of grew in production quality, production level. And then I started working for several different promoters in the LA area, filming their hype videos and their other different projects and stuff. And then I started branching outside of boxing, filming different things, which ultimately led to the creation of the YouTube channel under the Handwraps.
You know, Albert, I felt a very strong energy when we awarded you a Medal of Honor a few months ago for your services. What you have done to protect and keep our world safe is something that only one who lives it could even imagine it. So our praise to you for your courage and your great value as a human being.
Well, thank you, Mauricio.
Yeah, thank you, Albert. And let's go with Ivan. Gustavo's going to be last because he's the baby. Go, Ivan.
So I got into boxing as a kid, you know, growing up. My parents would always have they'd always be ordering the fights. I remember the Chavez fights, Barrera, Morales, Tyson fights, and you know, all the other little kids would be running around playing. But I think I'd be one of the few kids who actually stood there and sat there and watched the fights. But yeah, that's where it all started. And I think after that, when I was in high school, not too many kids knew about boxing, you know. So you couldn't really talk much about it. And then after that, I had a few of my cousin here, Sergio. He's actually one of the big reasons why I started the page. They convinced me to start the page, and I would just post content here and there, and to get people's opinions on fights and fighters and stuff like that. And it started growing little by little, and I started liking it. Like, you know, I never thought I'd have as many followers as I have. But yeah, man, boxing's a great sport. It brings a lot of people together, and here we are. I think what makes boxing so beautiful is that everybody has their own opinion. Everybody can voice their own opinion, and at the end of the day, everybody loves boxing, you know. So that's just pretty much how I started, and growing little by little, you know, going to events, going to fights. It's just a great experience. The last fight I actually got to go to was Fury and Wilder too, and the, you know, the ambiance in there, the energy in there was just unreal. I've never experienced something like that. Yeah. So it's awesome to be on here with you guys, man.
I think we all caught ourselves singing that night, right? Sweet Cat.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Amazing experience.
American Pie. Sweet Caroline and American Pie.
Yes.
Okay, now with Gustavo.
As the youngest of the bunch, it's an honor to be with you guys. Hopefully, you know, your family, yourselves are safe during this time. For me, you know, every Saturday when there were fights, I would watch it with my father, my brothers. But I think for me, boxing, I started loving it even more as a teenager. One fight that really captivated me was the Timothy Bradley fight when he fought 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗. And from there, it was like the way he showed his heart out. And I was like, oh my God, like, if that's not heart, what is heart? And then I was, during that time, you know, social media, the YouTube articles, they were getting very popular. And for me, as a fan, I was like, where can I find news about the next fight? Or, you know, what's going on with this fighter? What's life behind closed doors? Or, you know, exclusives. So, you know, Elie, a couple of guys started seeing Fight Hype, you know, Barak and 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗, a couple of guys that paved the way, and all you guys that are present. And the beautiful about the story about boxing is, like Mauricio said, there's a lot of untold stories that could be Hollywood movies. And then for me, it's like sometimes fighters don't have the opportunity to display those stories. And for me, the one situation for me was 2015 in New York. I was a fan. Canelo Alvarez versus Miguel Cotto press conference. I attended. This was like after work. And I was just so intrigued in terms of the promotion and media getting to talk to the fighters, and just the spectacle of it was so impressive. So from there, it was like, what if I got involved in some way, somehow? I was to talk to fighters and let them share their stories, you know, from different demographics, different parts of the world. And then late 2017, I got involved. I, you know, puzzled in, you know, 1, 2, and 3, and here I am now. And like I said, honored to be with you guys.
So you went as a fan to the press conference?
Yes, 2015, correct.
I was there. I was in that press conference.
Yeah.
So I saw you. I met you there.
Yes, I was 19 at the time when we probably first met. Yeah.
Nice.
And you still look like you're about 14 years old.
Thank you. I try to stay young, you know.
So if you don't mind, I would like to proceed and show you the video that we launched today as our world uniting together through our champions, through the voice of our heroes in the ring, telling everyone who is at home a special message. So let's see the video. 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗, please.
We are living something out of the ordinary.
Not ordinary times.
Yes, sometimes we feel fear. We feel fear.
There's a lot of uncertainty.
Because the news and the media.
We feel fear, even me, my point.
We are locked up without being able to do anything.
I know he doesn't want to yell at me.
She doesn't really want to blame me. No, she doesn't really want to blame it on me.
He's not to blame, and neither is my family.
She is not to blame, and neither is my family.
There is so much we can do.
Let's get moving.
There is so much that we could do.
Let's get moving. Let's get moving.
We are fighting for our family.
We are champions. Hey, let's get moving. We are champions.
We are the champions.
We are proving it in the ring. We've already proven it in the ring. We are champions.
Let's get moving.
We have already proven it in the ring.
And we have to prove it at home.
We already proved it in the ring.
Take care of your family.
Violence will not enter our home.
Violence will not enter our house.
Don't let violence to enter your house.
Take care of your families. Violence will not enter our house.
I care about you.
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 We are champions.
Please never give up and be healthy, be happy.
We are champions. We are champions.
Семья – это очень важно. Семья – самое главное, что может быть. Миша, как дела?
Bravo.
Bravo.
I love it. I love it.
Great.
I agree.
You know, it was challenging with the distance, and you know, it's hard to get a phone. You don't know how to use it, but I think it came out very well, and I'm very grateful to those who participated. And it is for you. You use it. Send the message out, and if you help us reproduce it in your networks, that will be sensational. And we did one in Spanish also. I don't know if would you like to see the one in Spanish?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Xochitl, ¿pueden poner el de español también? Okay, while they put it, this is emotions, you know. Okay, here it is.
Estamos viviendo algo
Fuera de lo común.
Fuera de lo común.
Sí, a veces podemos sentir miedo.
A veces podemos sentir miedo.
Mucha incertidumbre
Por lo que está pasando.
Y aquí encerrados sin poder hacer nada.
Yo sé que él no me
quiere gritar.
Yo sé que él
no me quiere gritar.
No, ella no me quiere culpar. Ella no me quiere culpar.
Él no tiene la culpa y mi familia tampoco.
Ella no tiene la culpa y mi familia tampoco.
Y tampoco mi familia.
Ella no tiene la culpa.
Yo sé que él no tiene la culpa
Y mi familia tampoco.
y ni mi familia tampoco.
Hay mucho que podemos hacer.
Hay mucho que podemos hacer.
Vamos a salir adelante.
Hay mucho que podemos hacer.
Vamos a salir.
Vamos a salir adelante.
Hay mucho que hacer.
Nos toca demostrarlo desde la casa. Somos campeonas.
Somos campeones.
Somos campeonas.
Y nos toca demostrarlo
En casa. Nos toca demostrarlo en casa.
Ya lo hemos demostrado en el ring.
Somos campeones.
No permitas que la violencia entre en tu casa.
Cuida a tu familia.
No permitas
Que la violencia entre en tu casa.
Cuida a tu familia.
En nuestra casa
En nuestra casa
no entra la violencia.
Me importas tú.
Me importas tú.
Me importas tú.
Me importas tú. Somos campeones. Vamos a salir adelante. Sí se puede. Somos campeones.
Awesome.
Nice, awesome.
Thank
Good
you.
stuff.
So
amazing.
that's it. We are just to finish up with the COVID-19. What we do, stay busy. What you have to do is keep a mental health. If you have anxiety by watching the news, stop watching the news. You're not going to resolve anything. You're not going to find the cure. You're not going to get the price of oil. You're going to resolve it. Stop watching whatever creates anxiety in you. Stop talking to those who are all negative, and keep yourself busy and entertained, and love and hug the ones who are right next to you, because it's difficult. I mean, we've been in a room and it's demanding, but we'll get through this. Look at our two heroes right here.
Yeah.
Okay, Nancy, go ahead.
Okay, so let's talk about what I really, one of my first questions I want to ask you guys is, you know, what makes you see a story and say, hey, I gotta post this on my social media? Or Elie, what makes you run and say, hey, I gotta get this story? What is the main thing that makes you want to post when a fighter?
There's so thank you, Nancy. So many elements to it. It could be a fighter's preparing for a fight. It could be they're doing something with their foundation or some event in the community. When it comes to posts, you have to be responsible and you have to be careful to be fair in everything you do. Not to come off like you're picking a side or picking one fighter over another. But what I realized when you walk into a boxing gym, there's endless stories and things can happen spontaneously. Like I know you just did something with Brandon Rios. There's never a boring moment with Brandon. It doesn't matter what's going on. Something will come up and it's going to become a story.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Anybody else want to talk about what makes you put a post up on a fighter?
Well,
yeah,
since I go in and
no, go ahead.
Since I go in and I kind of do a little bit of different content, or long form, usually what I'm looking at is there some type of conflict? Is there some type of story that's going to be involved in the writing of this short piece that I'm going to do on this fighter? So it's not necessarily always just throwing up content for the sake of putting up content, which you'll see oftentimes. Is there something that this fighter, this boxer, is being challenged with at this moment, and how is he overcoming that challenge? That's usually what'll go into a good post.
Okay, me personally, there's a few different reasons why I would post something. Sometimes it's just as simple as I think it's funny. You know, I think it's funny, I want to make people laugh. But most of the time it's really to either inspire the person who's pictured, you know, like the boxers. I really came into this game because I really want to give a platform for them. And I feel like we take them for granted. You know, we use them, but we don't really give to them. And I feel like I like to give them things. I like to show them in a way where they'll even feel inspired. And also, I want to edify the people. I want to edify whoever is watching and who's ever looking at my page. I feel like having a page is a great deal of responsibility, you know, and I don't take that lightly. But lastly, I want to say thank you to Albert for serving, man. God bless you, brother. You're the real hero, not me and I. You're the real
Thank
hero.
you, brother. Thank you. Nah, you guys are the real hero, man. I love you.
What draws me to posting about a fighter is the post or whatever they're saying their authentic self, whether it be them beefing with a fighter, whether it's them being funny or dancing around. I'm always drawn to any content that a fighter creates, whether it be on their social media or hearing them speaking in a public setting, that is their real true selves, not saying things just for hype, just them being natural. And I feel from those kind of natural utterances, you can craft content that will intrigue your audience. I love a little trash talk on Twitter when they're talking back to each other, when they have a genuine beef. I like when they're with their children, like when they're being funny, whatever it is, as long as it's natural and it's true to who we know them to be, that's kind of the thing that draws to being a story. But just doing things for the sake of doing them, it's a dead end in terms of telling a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ivan?
Oh no, 100%. You know what she had just mentioned. I go based. I don't like to just focus on one certain thing when I'm posting. You know, I like my posts to vary. Whether it's an upcoming fight, whether it's, you know, beef between a certain fighter or another, or an accomplishment a fighter has had, you know, inside or outside of the ring, you know, charities, simple things like that, man. You know, I like to vary my posts. Definitely, I like to give credit. You know, when I post, you know, I'm not at every fight, you know, I'm far away. My closest gym, you know, SoCal is about 5-6 hours away from me. I'm further up Northern California. So I don't get to go, you know, out to those gyms much. So I usually use people's content, you know, and I, you know, I credit them on my page. You know, I have people out in Southern California areas, out in, you know, the East Coast that send me content sometimes. So, I mean, I think it's important to vary in content, definitely.
And not only that, it also, I mean, it builds up excitement to where the fight's, well, whatever's going on before the fight, it definitely builds up excitement to where people are seeing. They're on social media, I'm assuming a lot longer than what they watch TV, to where it builds up excitement to fight night. And it gets more people engaged into that night.
Exactly, right.
Gustavo?
For myself, it varies, you know, it could be upcoming fights. Even nowadays, I think all of us are responsible for kind of informing the audience, or, you know, casuals becoming hardcore boxing fans, to follow every fighter from amateur to making their professional debut to eventually becoming the top guy of boxing. So just to inform them, you know, from the beginning roots, right? 1-0, 2-0, and then to inform them that they're going to be the biggest stars, it marinates for them to have the big fights. So one of the things I love to do is always make like future fights. I love to do polls. I love to do, you know, I like to get the fans' feedback, because at the end of the day, especially during this time, you know, the fans want to be part of this. They want to be engaged. And I think boxing ultimately brings everybody together at the end of the day. So that's usually what I post about.
Yeah, most definitely. And it comes with, like, I think everybody agreed, it comes with a lot of responsibility. One bad post can cost you a credential to a fight. We all know how the promoters are always watching all the social media pages, the channels, and they dissect it. They say, hey, you said this about one of our fighters. So yeah, it does come with responsibility.
Yeah, you know, with me, myself, I just, like, with Barak and myself, you know, we're on different platforms like SiriusXM, Nationwide Radio, and DAZN. So sometimes our influence is not only on social media. So one of our, you mentioned it earlier, the pull-up, you know, we created that because, I mean, Barak and I, we always been for the fighter, because, you know, fighters are scrutinized, and a lot of times they don't really get the credit they deserve, you know, being that they're risking their lives every time. And honestly, I'm okay with being biased. You know, I bring in the human aspect to this boxing thing. Like, you know, being biased is normally seen as taboo in boxing, right? So with me, myself, I don't want to speak for Barak, but he's transparent as well. If I have a certain relationship with a fighter, because we build a rapport, and I'm more personable with him, we become friends, I'm honest about being biased, because it's a natural human instinct. If I know you and I got some love for you, I'm gonna lean towards you. But I don't shy away from that. I speak it on a national platform where, yes, I'm biased, because, you know, whether Terrence Crawford and I, we shared a lot of moments together with him, me and Barak, you know, I'm going to root for him. I'm probably going to be biased, but I'm honest about it, and I don't hide it, you know? So I think that's important. That's an attribute that you know, that we bring to the table. But in terms of influence and why we put out content, the pull-up was created because so many internet shows and people don't realize how dangerous the sport really is. So the pull-up is not to really embarrass somebody, but in a way, just it's like the intervention for a troll that disrespects a fighter constantly on social media without really knowing what it is to live in their shoes. So the whole goal behind that, which Barak and myself created, is just to expose people that don't respect fighters. Which, I mean, that's obviously on DAZN and on YouTube, so it's not necessarily Instagram, but it's another form of influence, just to bring shed light on the risk that fighters really take, and how trolls or internet, you know, people should respect them a lot more than they do.
Yeah. Just so we could all get an idea, if anybody hasn't seen the pull-up, tell us about one of the pull-ups you did on any fighter.
Well, I'll let Barak elaborate, since I just
okay, go ahead.
Well, I will lay it. Well, no, let me talk about the biggest pull-up. The biggest pull-up was with 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗞𝗦, and it just so happened to be right before he had his last fight. You know, before he ended up in the hospital in a coma. So we called him up because we were monitoring his IG trying to find a troll. But what happened was a business owner who knew us called us and say, hey, listen, I got an employee that, you know, he's always talking bad about 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗏. I'm from the old school. I love 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗏. I need you guys to do what you guys did with Teofimo. Pull up on him. You know, so me and Ak, we set everything up with the zone. We went down there to his job. He worked in a store that only sells shoelaces, sneaker laces. I mean, it's a fly store downtown Manhattan. And that pull-up went viral. That pull-up went viral, had hip-hop artists like Busta Rhymes retweeting it, Ice-T. You know, it did almost 5 million views on Twitter. And it just goes to show, when you read the comments, you really see that people care for these fighters, and people all can actually relate to that, relate to somebody online being disrespectful. You know, and a lot of times the internet provokes people to be somebody they're really not. So we're trying to expose them and say, hey, listen, these guys go through a whole lot. And it's just so happened that same week, 𝗧𝗏 fought and ended up in the hospital and had surgery on his brain. And that's how real it is. And that's what we're trying to show.
I would like, Nancy, if I may, maybe this is my favorite program so far. Unbelievable. I'm on the other side today. And it's so interesting because the reporter is always behind the stories, behind telling the story of someone else. And I'm finding very interesting your minds on why, how, and how you do the things. I have a few comments. Number one, to report on amateurs and rookies, that's great. Anyone can talk about Joshua, about Wilder, about Fury, about Canelo. Anyone, even my son who is going to kindergarten. But to do stories about upcoming fighters, that's great. And I like to see if you can help me understand the code of ethics in social media and the relationship with the fans, because there are some vicious comments that are very customary to appear in social media. There's direct attacks, systematic attacks to X, Y, or Z. And there are fans or even outlets who provoke a story to go wrong by asking some questions and then taking a few words that are going to be controversial. I would like to hear what is your position and how to deal with that.
And here's a good answer to that. There should be a written code of ethics, and there should be some sort of written standard for credentialing of media to boxing or allowing people to cover the sport in a professional status. In your regular journalism world, there's several different organizations that have media code of conduct, like the Society of Professional Journalists has a media code of conduct that's followed when covering, you know, and whatever out in the world. With boxing, there's not necessarily a set code. There's not necessarily a set standard. There's not necessarily a set level of achievement in order to cover the sport. It's sort of a bit of a free-for-all. And in social media, where it's the Wild West, with opinion, with anger, with emotion, with politics, with race, with diversity. I mean, everything sort of goes in social media. So you'll have those that take advantage of sensational content or things that, you know, like we call 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗞𝗦, you know, like gossip, stuff that may not necessarily be true, but it's used to rile people up. That is the social media base, and it grows. And you'll see these people that are sensational with hundreds of thousands of followers where they're spitting vile stuff out. It doesn't necessarily promote the sport or benefit the sport or benefit any cultures, but it's sensational and you can't take your eyes off of it because it's, you know, it's interesting. It's like when two kids at the schoolyard are fighting. You know what I mean? I'm going to walk because I want to go see him fight at the bus stop too. And that's kind of the situation that you have right now. But there should be some sort of society, professional journalists, media code of conduct. You know, you'll see it at some of your fights. You know, a media code of conduct will be distributed. How often is it really followed? Not necessarily sure.
Well said, brother. Well said. I'm from the school of leading by example. You know, so I feel like, Mr. Sulaimán, I feel like it starts with us as individuals. So when it comes to myself, and I know we always talk about each other, but it's just so funny how we actually share the same heart in a lot of things. But when it comes to us, we're not guys who run after every story. We're in the midst of everything, just like everybody here on this panel. And we probably hear about the things, you know, similar time, sometimes maybe sooner, sometimes maybe later. But it depends on the story. If the story is edifying, if the story can help the fighter, then we'll put it out. If the story does not help the fighter, let's say if it's Adrian Broner getting locked up or the time when he was shot at. We knew about that, I mean, probably before anybody. You know what we do? We call Adrian Broner to our office, and we have a long talk with him. It was me, 50 Cent. We sat down and spoke to him for maybe 2 hours, trying to help him because we really care about the fighters. You know, so I really think that it starts with us leading by example, showing others in the same genre that relationships are more important than stories. That's how I feel, you know? So I put the human beings first before my story. So that's why I might not, you know, promote a lot of things. So when I'm looking on Instagram, I see everybody posting about such and such. But if I feel like it doesn't help the fighter, then I won't even join in.
I think it primarily depends on what your voice is within the sport. If you are a specific news source and your goal is to report the sport as a whole, you will only talk about what goes on in the ring, what happens with opponents, what happens with promotions, etc. There are other outlets that get more into the gossip side, no different from the Worldview with the Enquirer and all those old tabloid sheets. So there's always going to be that element. I agree with Barak that it starts with self-accountability and the type of work you're trying to cultivate and the type of audience that you're going to reach. And when you have established who you are and what the voice is of your outlet, all you can do really is to stay in that lane and keep reporting in the method that you're going to report. There's always going to be other outlets who are more on the sensationalized end, maybe are like to amplify the racial elements of the sport. There, you can't really control that. You can control that in terms of credentialing and how the PR people allocate who they invite to the fight by having their own standard. As journalists, we can only run in our lane. A lot of the oneness of that relies upon PR, the promoters, etc., and who they let into the fights. Beyond that, we can only have our tunnel vision, but there's always going to be that element of that gossip side because the sport wants the numbers. It's trying to compete with other sports. And if these sensationalized platforms are generating these thousands and hundreds and thousands of views, they're going to continue to be invited because it's more eyes on the sport who get to watch it. It's no different than, say, like the Shade Room. You know, it's a breeding ground for negativity, but they have 15 million followers. So when you want a story, it amplifies it to that level. The same with boxing. It may not, all press is good press. So even if it's not necessarily the press you want, since boxing has been relegated to a below the fold type of sport, you're still going to invite those type of outlets because you want those eyes on the sport. It's unfortunate, but it's just kind of like the cost of doing business. Is what do you want? Do you want more eyes or do you want more quality? And there lies in the rub.
You know, it's so true. We live in a world where if you are violent, or just look at your kids, what do they play in their video games? It's all violence. You go to a movie, you have a exorcism movie and you have a very nice comedy, or we go to see the violent, the scary, the bloody things. And that's a reality. So I see how journalism has to compete with the numbers against the good stories, because always the good story is gonna fall behind the sensational, the accident, the racism attack, and all these things that happen. This leads to one more question that I have.
Mauricio, if I may really quick, just to talk about that. Sometimes it happens involuntary, where your numbers come up. And I'm gonna give you a perfect example. Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. That money belt was, the WBC money belt was on TMZ, the shade, it was everywhere. The WBC Instagram page grew, I mean, I don't even want to exaggerate, but at least 50,000 followers to maybe 100,000. It was a lot of followers just because of the impact of a fight between Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor. So that just tells you what the fans want to see, what the people want to see.
Yeah, that belt was a trophy to add a specific element for the fight. And because McGregor had the full support of the UFC, and Floyd was all on his own. So we talked about it, and we came up with a money belt, which made the news everywhere, all over the world, not because, but through boxing, but that brought to other people that we didn't like. But what I wanted to lead to is there's a very thin line between hyping up a fight verbally or on social media or even physically. I would like to know your opinion. What is acceptable? What should the industry accept just undergoing over something that becomes unacceptable and should not happen, should be reprimanded? I don't know if I make myself clear.
No, I think I understand you.
I'd love to love your opinions.
I think I understand it as what would be allowed for a professional covering the sport. And in that context, there shouldn't be anything that would be considered nefarious or anything that would be considered as an attempt to dissuade from what the truth is. There's going to be situations that are going to present opportunity for material to be reported on that is salacious or sensational, but how did you acquire that, and how do you conduct yourself in the process of acquiring that material?
I think I'm sorry, Albert, go ahead. I think ultimately you just have to have a really basic set of core standards that we will not accept hate speech, harassment, religion, anything of that nature. Beyond that, you have to allow the freedom of the press to express opinions and say what they want to say without fear of retribution. Because a lot of times within the sport, if you have a strong voice and a strong opinion and it's factually based, you're still subject to penalization. Oh, you won't get a credential, or you won't be allowed into the fight because you have a strong opinion. Now, hate speech, religion, etc., all of that, it absolutely shouldn't be tolerated from the media perspective. However, voices shouldn't be silenced just because they have strong opinions that might be contrary to who they side may be, as long as it's factually based. So it's kind of a strange tipping ground if you work within the media, because boxing is so small, and one wrong thing and you're banned from sport, and that's it, even if it's something that's factually based. So those are some other elements to consider as well. Where lies freedom of speech within it, but still taking note of hate speech, harassment, etc. From the media side, we can't control what fighters do.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I wanted to go back for a second, Mauricio, what you were talking about. The problem is many times if we hear a headline, a fighter gets arrested, it doesn't mean they're guilty. And many times in the media, they're tried. And I know 3 personal cases where fighters in the big headline were like, they did so-and-so, and in the end, there was no charges, there was no case. So the media in general has to be responsible when it comes to the way they present their story, number one. Number two, it's a lot of copying. So if one fighter sees one fighter push it away in, then another fighter will push plus a slap, and then it becomes push, slap, and a punch. So they have to keep it where it's professional. And at the same time, maybe a promoter or someone I shouldn't say promoter, someone tells them, hey, maybe if you push them at the face-off, we'll get more views, we'll get more interest. So they have to just know that it's not worth it for them to do, and it's a risk. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, when we talked about positive stories, I've uploaded 90,000 videos to YouTube about boxing, 90,000. When it's a story that's a positive one, it doesn't get views. It could be Sergio Martinez visiting a kid the last day this kid is alive, and the next day the kid passed away. Nobody watched it. Or a fighter giving back to the community. Devin Haney gives food to the homeless, nobody's watching. He makes a mistake and everybody's on him. So it has to be more fair and balanced.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The thing about being tried by the media or by the public before, I mean, there's always if you commit a crime, whichever is a crime, you have a due process and you go to court. That happens in a anti-doping, in a doping, in a positive, you have to do an investigation. I mean, every time a positive comes out, that fighter is labeled as a cheater and as a PED abuse, blah, 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 even before the whole process is finished. And that happens if you're arrested. I mean, there's so many things that happen. And that thin line, Elie, what I'm trying to learn from you as media, is it okay to push a fighter in a weigh-in? Is it okay to verbally assault the opponent or their team or their families? We know it has a factor to hype up a fight. We know it's the nature of sports and boxing, but there has to be, it's a very complicated definition of that thin line of what is acceptable and what is not. And that's what we have to deal several times continuously in different aspects. And that's why I like to hear the voice from you, from the media. What do you consider that thin line to be? Where is it is crossed? Because once you get labeled and everybody jumps on it, it's very hard to go the other way.
Mr. Sulaimán, I'm very glad that you're bringing this up, first of all, and I'm probably going to be in a minority in this, but I don't think it's a thin line. I think that it's a very thick line, and it's very obvious that no man or woman should put their hands on another man or woman except inside the ring. I think that those things have just become acceptable, and us as media and fans, we post it, people love it, so therefore it's acceptable. If that happened right outside of the arena, right outside of the conference or the weigh-in, you go to jail. So I just think that's just something foolish that we're teaching the younger fighters, or we're just teaching people watching in general that it's okay to get upset to the point where you want to put your hands on another person. I think that's disrespectful. I think it should be some kind of reprimanding. I think if there's no consequences, people are going to keep doing it. It's done it almost every weigh-in because there are no consequences. And to me, I don't like it. I know we all accept it, so I'll even post it. But deep down, I really hate when that happens.
Thank you. I love it.
You know, I'm gonna have to agree with him on that. You know, everybody likes a little push and shove. You know, but what if it's the weigh-ins? You know, the day before the fight. What if a fighter falls and gets hurt? What happens then? You know, I agree. There should be some type of repercussions. Another thing I want to touch up on, man. On my page, I've made it very loud and clear. Any type of racial comment, I immediately block the person, and they have no, they don't have a voice on my page anymore. I'm just not one to condone any type of racial comment. And you see it a lot, unfortunately, especially on my page. And I've had to delete a handful of people, and it's horrible.
Let me tell you a story. My father went to New York City for a press conference, Mike Tyson against Lennox Lewis. My father is there, and there's a big curtain. It was a theater. There's a big curtain, so they are behind the curtain. Then the tables are set up. In front of that curtain, there's two little platforms where eventually each fighter stood up in. So my father is talking to all these people who are attending the press conference behind stage, waiting for this to happen. So all of a sudden, they come out. So my father is not looking, he's behind the curtain. Lennox Lewis come out, Mike Tyson comes out, and they were told to do a face-off. So Mike Tyson immediately went and faced Lennox, and that was staged. But nobody took in consideration the reactions. One of Lennox Lewis' handlers put his hand on Mike Tyson right here, and boom, Tyson threw a punch, and then it all started. And my father got injured in that. They all fall into the curtain. My father was there. He got hit and hit his head, and that changed his life. That brought him into a wheelchair. But that's the type of thing that you were referring. A push, and he falls from the stage, no fight. A punch, you get caught, something happens, no fight. So I love this concept of there's no thin line. It's very clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
When Thomas DeLorme and Kareem Mayfield fought in New Jersey, they touched each other at the weigh-in. They put hands, and each one got fined 20% of their purse. So that was their biggest paydays of their career. But not a lot of people reported it. It didn't come out a lot. But if fighters would know they lose 20%, they're not going to do it. It's too much money on the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where you got to get people, man, in their pockets where it hurts the most. Like, we all love the intensity of a face-off, right? Especially when it's authentic. Look, this is a barbaric sport. There's no question about it. So, you know, the day before a fight, a lot of adrenaline going through your body, thoughts of battle. And I can respect and understand a fighter being in that moment. So you can, to be honest with you, some of the best face-offs that I've ever saw, fighters didn't touch each other at all. And it was just an intense stare, and you can feel the energy. And I've been fortunate enough to be at most of those weigh-ins in the last, 6-7 years, and being there, you can feel the intensity, and that alone drives you to want to see this fight the next day. So it doesn't necessarily mean if a punch is, that might be the appetite of the general public, drama, but in reality, an intense face-off can have the same effect in you wanting to see a fight opposed to pushing and shoving. But like Barak and Elie mentioned, and all of you here, if they're reprimanded and if they're hit in their pockets, and this is something that, yes, that everybody, all of the media outlets put out there and report, trust me that fighters will be hesitant, and we'll see less of that drama and more just a warrior getting ready to compete. And, this is not, I don't consider this a sport, man. This is something different, boxing. It's something really intense. We call it a sport, but this is barbaric. So, an intense face-off is good enough for me.
There you go. I just wanted to mention, Og made a great point before in terms of biases. I think each of us have our preference and whatnot, but I think at the end of the day, we need to respect every fighters that are taking the blows, because, that's very damaging. Some, look at the history, most of them are never the same, and physically wise, as they age up. And, for me, we know that negativity is never, it's like a never ending cycle. And I don't mind if, for example, right, for me, I experienced when a fighter loses and the fans, and they be like, oh, good for him, this and that. Like, they don't understand that these fighters also have emotions, all the hard work they put in, they dedicate their craft. They gave up their whole childhood just to make their dreams come true. And I think just for us media, I think I want to give everybody respect, because, you guys are, fair enough. You guys have your choices, but at the end of the day, I think you guys are all open-minded. You know, I have DMs where people are like, oh, you know, you should only represent this demographics, and I'm like, no, that's not my job. My job is to be open-minded and to better the sport and to educate others, you know, different stories or different fights. I think, you know, as long as you're being fair and you're open-minded to hearing others' feedback, even if it's negative, but just to educate them a little bit, I think it's a win for the sport.
And you know, just to point out, Gustavo, one of the things I respect about him, he's a young upcoming, you know, boxing media person, and
thank you, man. Appreciate
it. There was a situation where, you know, I felt like he made a irresponsible mistake and about talking to Gervonta Davis, and I just voiced my opinion as a friend in his DM. I said, listen, I think you could have worded that differently because. I don't want to point out exactly what video it was, but he might remember. And he was open-minded and didn't feel, you know, he wasn't embarrassed about it. He said, you know what, you're right. I could have worded that differently. My bad. That was wrong. And even though, you know, on, you know, I might even put it on the comments, but there's so many people that say that responded in a negative way. Oh, say what you want. Oh, you know, as far as like comments, like it's, you know, this is your job. Now, it's not your job to instigate and create something that really doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so being open-minded and being able to take that criticism and apply it, it says a lot about your character. So I respect that.
Yeah. And one thing I say to you, right? We all are different individuals, and the way we process things or the way we word things, we could analyze it differently. So, you know, if your opinion was, like, say, for example, I might have used the words incorrectly. I didn't take that offense. Yeah. So, you know, I wasn't offended by it because at the end of the day, you put in so much work, and I respect everybody's opinion, you know. So, like I said, everybody reads text differently. So that's why when I said, you know, I shouldn't be attacking him or not, because at the end of the day, if it was a respectful comment, you voiced your opinion. And the only thing I could do as an individual, as a human being, is, you know, just respect where you're coming from. And that's it. You know, I think that's what the sport should always be about. Be open to, like you said, criticisms and what you could improve on. Because nobody in this world is perfect, you know. So, you know, and I said thank you for that, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know,
I'm gonna,
oh, yeah, go ahead, Albert.
I'm going to bring it back to the weigh-in because in your story about your father, Mauricio, because back then you had a scuffle at the weigh-in, and it was huge because there were a limited number of media outlets. Now the weigh-ins have to get bigger, they have to get crazier, people have to talk more, things get more offensive because there's so many different outlets that are competing for that attention. And we got to be honest also, people don't cover boxing. Well, a lot of people do cover boxing and don't get paid, but their means of getting paid is by the views, by people, you know, by their YouTube channel, Google AdSense, however it is that, you know, if they can maybe get some free t-shirts, you know, from some boxing t-shirt guy, that's how these guys are getting paid. And if they can get more views, they're going to put that more sensational video up there rather than standing high on the morals and say like, oh, you know, maybe I shouldn't post this video, because we've all been in that spot. And I've been standing next to quite a few of you guys in some of these scrums over the last like 6 years where we said, man, I got this video, I'm going to post it. It's going up right now. We're running outside to get service to see who can post it first, you know, and that at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. But the responsibility or the onus on that has to go, you know, it's a mix. Is it the fighter? Is it the media? Who's responsible for that? You know, and there has to be some level of responsibility weighed on the fighter for how they carry themselves and how they conduct themselves. You know, it's a bigger picture, and I'm sure we could probably break this down and analyze it 100 different ways of who's helping that fighter, who's managing him, who's in charge of him. You know, what type of person is that fighter? Does his manager know what type of person that fighter is? And sort of try and limit those situations. But when you have those big events like a weigh-in, and you have people that don't conduct themselves like professional, it's a stain, and it's sort of a curse of the sport, because this is the sport of the poor. We all do come from the streets. Well, not all of us maybe, but a lot of us do come from the streets, and we come from those backgrounds where, you know, when things get intense, anger replaces professionalism. And those types of events will continue to happen. They're going to continue to be sensationalized because now our media pool lives and thrives off of that.
Yeah,
That's a
Albert, I
very
wanted to
good point.
mention. Oh, sorry, you could go.
No, that's a very good point about how these YouTubers get paid and how important it is to get views. That's a very good point, Albert.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Albert. Oh, sorry, did I cut somebody off?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to mention real quick, Albert made a good point about, fighters should be accountable too, because there was a situation Albert just mentioned about, the way YouTubers get monetized and in the competition, who's running and putting it up first. And there was a perfect example. I don't want to mention the names out of respect, but, during in Miami Super Bowl weekend, a certain situation happened, right? And that happened to me. And in my head, I'm like, this is not a good way to go. So, you try to ignore it and really hopefully nobody puts it up. And unfortunately, a fan put it up and it just made the fighter look bad. So, I mean, like I said, fighters should be held accountable and also media should know when to put something up and not put up, So Albert was, right on point on that.
I think one of the common words that everybody's using is responsibility. And the idea of putting something on the air, on the internet, or it could be a face-off, could be anything, but you feel when a fighter used to do that, or when he's been forced to do that, or when it's classy or not. And then it's up to you to decide if you put it on or not. It is hard to educate people. It is hard, but it's a responsibility also for us to show them what should be in the sport and what shouldn't be, and what we like to show or not. And I love to use that, the responsibility and the thin line that used to be a thin line, but now we agree all that it's a thick line. I love that, Barak.
Today is Brittany Goosen birthday.
Happy birthday,
Happy birthday, Brittany.
And also, if you have never watched Carlos Zárate against Alfonso Zamora fight, today is the anniversary. It was called the War of the Z's because both are with Z. It's one of the greatest 4 rounds. It was it only lasted 4 rounds, but it was unbelievable. Just to know, Zárate record: 46 wins, undefeated, 44 knockouts.
I think there's someone on the cover.
Zamora, 28 wins, 28 knockouts, both undefeated. Zárate WBC champion, Zamora WBA champion, and it was just an unbelievable fight. If you haven't seen it, it's a good celebration today as it's their anniversary.
Good one to watch today. And I know you guys get a lot of emails, press releases from me. Not all of them get posted. Some of them I have seen, and thank you for supporting WBC and everything we send out. But for the prospect that's just getting into boxing, that isn't known, how can he reach out to your media outlet so you guys can put their content? How would you help out prospects?
Here's some good advice for prospects and younger fighters that are just turning pro, or even fighters with 10, 15 fights that just don't have a fan base or may fight in a different area. Get yourself out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific kind of content. Just be consistent with some kind of content. If you go on a run every day, film yourself while you're running every day. If you have a hobby that maybe not a lot of people know about, film yourself doing that hobby and post that on a regular, consistent basis. Through that, your social media footprint will grow, okay? It's those, not everybody is going to be a Ryan Garcia type kid or like an Oscar De La Hoya. Not everybody's going to have that $1 million smile or a whole team behind them, building them into who they are. What you can do at the lowest level is be consistent, post stuff about your life, and you would be surprised how many people will start following.
Well, Nancy, I agree with everything Albert said. If any kid out there wants to post, just send me a text message. I'll give him my number. It's 818-522-0221. It's very simple. 818-522-0221. And Albert is right. Just post yourself and be responsible. You know, make sure that it's you in the video.
I'm gonna post act with my head on Act's body.
Anybody else want to give some advice to the prospects trying to get exposure through social media?
Sure, Nancy. Usually people reach out to me through Instagram, and I'm always publicly known for saying I don't do DMs, don't DM me. But I just say that, but truthfully, I look at my DMs. And I'm the kind of person that I have to know I have to really study that person. So let's say a young person gives me a DM. I'm looking through his page. I'm not just gonna post just because you're young and you wanna get on. I'm not gonna do that. You know, I'm looking through your page and I'm trying to sift out your character, trying to see your character, trying to see what kind of person you are. If I see you smoking blunts in one picture or you know, disrespecting women in another post, then guess what? I'm not helping you. Straight up and down. Maybe I might give you advice and help you that way, but I'm not going to post you. You know, so me, I would say if anybody needs help, Instagram is a wonderful tool. It has been an incredible blessing to me, but only if you use it wisely and godly, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nancy, time is running up. I just want to thank everybody. It's a pleasure to see you again. We see each other in the fights, and we've been at home for almost 2 months.
If I can say, this new magazine was just released, Boxing Illustrated, on the cover. I know, Mauricio, this picture is very special to you.
Yes. Nelson Mandela. He was the greatest inspiration to the WBC and my father. We fought together with against South Africa, apartheid, for 16 years, and then Nelson Mandela was freed. As president, he inaugurated the WBC convention, and it's a very dear picture for us. Thank you, Nancy.
We're going to be giving some of these away, but you can go to BoxingIllustrated.com and get your copy. There's a beautiful story about Don Jose in there, and yeah, check it out.
Speaking of magazines, make sure you pick up the new Ring magazine. There's a cool article about Barak and myself in this magazine, and it says a lot about like what's been going on in the last couple of years with us. So make sure you look that up in the new Ring magazine.
That's for sure.
Hey, you have to send some of those, but sign it.
Yeah.
You have to send some of them, but sign it for us, okay?
Hey man, speaking about magazines, man, we've got a long collection of the Ring magazines from way back. We got a bunch of them.
Careful, Mauricio's gonna ask you for it.
Yeah. I got a bunch. We have a bunch here. My uncle's been collecting them since the 60s, 70s.
You know, next year they're celebrating 100 years to the Ring magazine.
Yeah.
That is insane. Crazy. That is insane. Hey, you guys, I don't know how much time we've got left here, but I got a question for every single one of you guys. When boxing comes back, what fight do you guys want to see the most?
I think that could be the closing. Everybody goes around saying that fight, and that's a very good.
Yeah.
So Albert, what's your choice?
Oh, really? I mean, I'm just gonna state the obvious. Chocolatito Juan Francisco Estrada.
Oh,
I mean, that's the best fight in the world you can make. That's makeable.
Yeah.
What about Teofimo?
Yeah.
Yep. I'm gonna have to agree with that. Same here, man. I think everybody was stoked about that fight, Teofimo Lopez and Vasil Lomachenko.
Yeah.
Same here.
How about Barak? Victor, let them talk. Victor, come on.
We really need to see Jose Ramirez in there. He went through those, I mean, basically, what, 2 camps?
Yeah.
He's definitely wants to see him there.
Absolutely.
I want to see Crawford versus Spence when boxing eventually opens back up. Whatever we need to do that. In our recent interview with Bob Arum, he disclosed to us that They were kind of talking about it, but they still had a bad taste in their mouth after Mayweather-Pacquiao. But then following the Fury-Wilder 2 fight, it went so well with Top Rank working with PBC. They thought they had a good dialogue. And he said they were very close to starting to negotiate that fight. But then Errol Spence had his accident. And so that kind of closed out the talks that Bob Arum was having with the PBC side. So you can listen to that interview on the Boxing Insider website.
I want to see just the 4-rounders and 6-rounders fight because they're the ones that are hurting now financially. That don't have money for food or rent.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, everybody's saying boxing has no fans and will come back with no fans. But the reality is every fight that I go to between 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., there's no fans in the arena. So it's not going to make a difference really that much for the first 5-6 fights on the card.
Good point. Good point. I think Victor started a wave, and I'm just going to continue that wave. I want to see Teofimo versus Lomachenko. I definitely want to see other fights like Terrence Crawford and Bud. Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. But I want to see Errol Spence get better. I want to see him fight somebody else maybe first and then that. But I think Teofimo and Loma, I think they're just both ready right now, and that's the fight I really want to see.
Yeah, I'm just gonna echo that, man. Like, there's a ton of fights I want to see, but I was so excited about Teofimo and Lomachenko. I just think I think highly of Teofimo, and obviously Lomachenko. He is who he is. So that's something I can't wait for them to get that fight back on track, man. I'm super excited.
On the female side, I was really excited for Cecilia Brækhus versus Jessica McCaskill. I really wanted to see that one.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping to see Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano in the UK. Yeah, that's a great fight for me.
Yeah.
Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez, another great fight. I think two clash of two different generations. I think that's great for the sport. Yeah.
Excellent. I want to thank each one of you. So very special for your time, your friendship, your dedication and passion for the sport. I personally appreciate each one of you. Wish you the best. We're going to be back soon. We're going to be hugging each other in person. And, well, I'm so happy. Good news, and good news keep coming. We have heroes, survivors. We have beautiful persons always trying to get boxing out there. So all the best. Thank you so very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to seeing you very soon.
Well, Mauricio,
and the virus is real. The virus is real.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Good message.
Tell them what you have tomorrow so they can share it on their social media, who you're interviewing tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow we're going to have this WBC Talks. We have Julio César Chávez in the Spanish version, and then Sugar Ray Leonard.
Wow.
The English version. So if you would like to watch it, last week Mike Tyson was great. Leila Ali was sensational. So we're having lots of fun with this, and I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so very much.
Thank you,
Mauricio.
Thank you for having us.
Nancy, Albert, Barak,
Nancy, thank you guys for having us on here.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate it.
Jeandra.
Thanks,
everybody. This was round number 22 of the WBC. Stay home, stay safe.
Mauricio Sulaimán reporting.
Yeah.
You guys have a good day.
Stay safe. See you guys. Stay safe. You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay.